Grab your coffee and join me, Nakoa, for a caffeinated conversation about life. I'll be talking to people who have chosen to walk their own paths and, just like me, are creating a life by design. I hope it will give you the inspiration you need to do exactly the same. Welcome, everybody. I am so honored to welcome, and I will use a phrase, Christina. I'm going to use a phrase that you use every time you go on Instagram. Welcome, beautiful soul. How are you this morning?
Thank you. I am very well. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much. I apologize. My dog just hit his drinking trough.
Oh, I love it. Oh, we love background noise. We love authenticity. So welcome to Christina's living room, wherever you're sitting in this beautiful space. Yep. Christina Benson, you are known as the Quantum Healing Coach.
Yeah.
And I have been so excited about bringing you onto the podcast. I'm going to give a little background and some real synchronicities that have happened that make me just, not surprised at all, as my father would say. I'm not surprised. So everybody, please join in. You're going to want to sit here until the very end. I promise you. I know that this is going to be filled with insights and maybe some new beliefs that you've never considered before in your life on planet Earth. So Christina, she, prior to her awakening, which we will tap into, was educated and worked as a corrective exercise specialist, a personal trainer. She worked with really special populations. She worked with individuals who had undiagnosable illnesses. They were, in the process of trying to figure out what they needed. And she was really helping them in a rehab perspective, structural injuries, helping people help themselves, but began to recognize that, we're not getting to the root cause. Something is really driving these illnesses, driving these injuries. And she kept getting repeat customers. Now, I'm going to ask her to talk a little bit more about that today. But ultimately, she came into a new way of being after watching all of this in her world, in her work, and said, you know what? There's energy underneath all of this. There's belief systems. And now she's a quantum healing coach. She'll tell us what that means. And her goal is to free individuals of any patterns and limiting beliefs that have been holding them back from an ideal life by design. And I think we're doing the same work. We're just sometimes calling it different things, Christina. So why don't you tell us what in the world is a quantum healing coach, first of all?
I get that question a lot. And, I use the word quantum because quantum is infinite. Quantum is everything. And what I discovered when I was working with people is that going back a little bit to the structural aspect, yes, we can do rehab, we can do physical therapy, but then we had to incorporate nutrition, and then I had to incorporate the thinking patterns, and then eventually I had to incorporate the emotional processes, life patterns, and even trauma, because ultimately it's everything. So quantum, from that perspective, means everything. But then also, because of my abilities since my awakening, I'm able to see into the quantum field and see and read people's scalar waves. So when I'm working with a person in a session, for example, I'm able to read and scan their body when we're in a meditative state and recognize where there's trapped energy. And it always comes back to, like, if they have hip problems, for example, there's trapped energy in that area. If they have psoriasis or throat problems or anything in the throat area, there's trapped energy there. So what I like to do is move the energy through a series of processes and clear it, but then also identify how we need to support it in the 3D life, because we can't just work with the energy and not support the physiology. So quantum is everything. So
Right. Quantum is everything. Quantum physics is the first thing that comes to mind to me as well. And I've done work with a quantum healing hypnosis therapist in the past and did some kind of regression and really interesting work. But let's go to, you said, this whole thing about energy and pain and injury and illness. This is reminding me of Louise Hay's work.
Yes,
and that's one of my favorite books, How to Heal the Body. Can you explain what I mean by that for people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think you know this, but I'll just also, I'm a channel, so I receive information. I'm actually working on this behind the scenes. How it's been shown to me, and I love Louise L. Hay's work. I feel like we're all just building. She was the foundation for so many healers that are coming forth. So she's like the godmother of all of this work, right? She brought it to our reality first. But what it is our body is literally a living map of our history. So say if you're 3 years old and something happened and it led you to feel shameful, you're probably going to have shameful frequencies within, usually that's in your sacral chakra around the womb area. If you had extreme grief at a specific time in your life, we're going to find those energies in the heart area. And then it also applies to David Hawking's Power versus Force, the frequency scale. Mm-hmm. So all emotion is just energy in motion, and all emotion has a specific frequency. And shame is at the very, very bottom. So I see a lot of people with sexual trauma who have had deep, deep shame, and so they have those frequencies trapped in specific areas in the body that would correlate to the experience. So getting back to when I was working with people with structural injuries, I couldn't help. Well, they couldn't heal. It's not up to me. I'm just a guide. I'm just a facilitator. But they couldn't get to the crux of their healing if we couldn't identify where the emotion came from, the energy in motion, or I should say that wasn't in motion. So our goal is to get the energy moving out of the body so that the cells can heal themselves, because, and this is how it's been shown to me. And when I share this type of stuff, this is channeled information. This isn't something I've received from anybody.
So let's define channeling. I actually shared a podcast or a YouTube video the other day of a woman named Maria. And when she gives her messages, she closes her eyes. And I've sent it to 2 or 3 people, and they're like, the first thing they say is, why are her eyes closed? So could you define channeling for people who may be...
Yeah, I love this topic. So, and I think that there's a couple of levels to it as well, right? Because a lot of us are familiar with Abraham Hicks or Cryon. Yeah. And those are people that they actually they have a full other consciousness that steps into their body. I consider that more of a medium channel. They're actually acting as a medium between 2 worlds. But then there's a lot of us who are just, I would say, open channels, meaning for me, I'm able to go within and get into such a deep state, and then I'm able to open my crown chakra and receive the information, whether it be through vision or just clear knowing. And sometimes I do receive thoughts in my mind that are from a higher consciousness. And depending on the person, and I would say their soul contract, because that's where it gets really deep, but depending on a specific soul contract that we might have, we might be channeling our higher self. We might be tuning into other consciousnesses. We might be channeling some higher entity that's like Cryon or Abraham Hicks, right? They're channeling into the high echelons of the other dimensions. For myself, I'm channeling my higher self. So my higher self is basically my soul, is in a higher consciousness state and is able to speak through me and show me things from a higher perspective. And my soul also has shared experiences with a lot of science background. So Tesla, George Carey, who was a famous astrologer and scientist and philosopher. All these words in the early 1900s. So my soul is able to tap into information that they wanted to bring forth into this reality. So when we're channeling, I like the easiest way to explain it is just like on your TV. When you go to a specific channel, some of us are able to, and I feel like all humans have this capability. It's just to varying degrees. But some of us are able to access a more pure channel based on our role here, and oftentimes based on our intention. So for me, my intention to want to help people was so deep. My mother was a very unhealthy woman, and and Amy would know that, my cousin, but my mother had so many health issues that helping people heal their bodies was a very heartfelt process for me. So this really opened my channel because my heart was so deeply in it. So when I need the information, it just starts popping into my head, and I hear it, and then I also see it. So I'm able to receive the science, and then I'm also able to see into the quantum field, if you will, atoms. I'm able to see atoms, subatomic particles, that kind of thing, which is essentially energy. And then I talk to people.
And that's a type of clairaudience. What are those different categories of ways of seeing or receiving intuitively.
So there's clairvoyance, which is where we're able to see it. But I think people get confused because we see it with some people can see it with their naked eye, but most of us see it with our third eye. And then there's a little bit varying degrees of both. There's claircognizance, which is clear knowing. You just know something. And I think a lot of people have that where they're just like, I just know that, but I don't know how I know that. That's claircognizance. Clairaudience, which is where we hear something. And again, that's just like the vision where you can hear it externally, but for a lot of people, they're hearing a voice inside of their head, and it will sound just like their own thoughts and their own voice, but the vocabulary and the depth of the message will be different, and that's how you can recognize the difference. And then there's clairsentience, which is where we just feel something, right? So I see this a lot, especially with empaths, where they're like, ooh, my right hand is tingling, which means something for you, right? So they know how to tap into it. That's their ability. But a lot of people have that, even where you're able to walk into a room and you can feel how the energy is different. That would be a perfect example of clairsentience.
Guess what, y'all? I published a book. Your Life by Design, a Coffee with Nicoa self-care coaching journal, is now available on Amazon. This interactive journal begins and ends with powerful queries, guiding you on a quest for the kind of life by design you don't need a vacation from. I've included an in-depth look at strategic self-care to empower you and hold you accountable to really getting to know your true self. It's time to prioritize you. Use the link in the show notes to buy yours today.
Yeah, thank you for defining that because, I've been working in energy leadership for years, for 14 years, and it's a consciousness model, and there's 7 levels of energy. You can align them to the chakras. You can align them. When you talked about shame being at the bottom level of those vibrations, then that's like a level 1 victimhood energy where I've lost before I've even started. So there's so much that's consistent with all of this. I used to call it, a leadership model back in the day, And then I began testing the waters in these corporate environments where I would go in. I was a former corporate girl. And I then began to call it the 6 Sigma of self-awareness, which is an internal manufacturing process improvement phrase, which just meant a common language. But now I'm like, this is a consciousness model, guys. This is energy. Everything is energy. I mean, everybody's ready. I think the timing right now is pretty critical. I'm no longer hesitant, and people are no longer resistant in those corporate environments. They might joke about it, but they are ready. So are you finding that to be the case as well with your clients? Are you getting an uptick in interest?
Yes, definitely. And especially online. I mean, I literally had 1,000, I don't like to use the word followers, but I had 1,000 people who were interested in my content back in early December. And now I have almost 13,000 in 2 months. So there's been a huge consciousness shift. And I feel like that's largely due to the solar flares. People are seeking answers because we are upgrading in consciousness.
Well, I know 2024 I feel the relief. So I'm Capricorn, and I think something about Pluto moving somewhere and leaving out of my place. So I don't know enough, but I know enough to reference things like that with my friends and so often my clients. So let's describe that. You mentioned the scalar waves. I know about the solfeggio frequencies, and I'll listen to them, and I'm not sure what they're doing for me, but I'll play it in the whole house. And so could you help us understand that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm just going to use the body for reference. So when we have somebody has shame trapped in them, what I'm able to see is the subatomic particles. And I like to use visuals. When people see this, are they going to be able to see the video as well if they choose to?
Well, they will be listening at the moment, but I'm going to be sharing these little clips. So go ahead, and I'll make sure and carve this out and share it with the world.
And I'll verbally explain it as best I can too, but this is how I like to explain it when I'm in session or when I'm working with somebody who really doesn't have a full understanding of how it works. Everything's vibrating. So, and for anybody who's not seeing this, I'm holding up my fingertips, and what I want you to look at is my fingertips, and they're just slightly vibrating. Everything is always vibrating like this. That's your subatomic particles, right? We have our protons, our neutrons, our electrons. They're always vibrating. Now, throughout your body, you have different vibrations depending on how the body functions, right? Because the body it's one assimilated vessel that vibrates harmoniously, but somewhat differently in different areas. That's just how the function works. And when we have, for example, a vibration of shame, I'm just going to use the womb area because I see this so much with actually, I'll use the throat because I think the throat, a lot of people are having their throat chakras open. So let's use the throat. So if somebody has the vibration of shame in their throat area, in their throat chakra, then say if it's supposed to vibrate like this, it might be vibrating like this, much, much slower. And then when it's not vibrating at the right speed, then the cellular structure, the entire physical vessel is not up to the highest enough voltage where the cells can function properly. So this is where we would find autoimmune illnesses, even cancers, all these illnesses that will come up. And this will, of course, lead into emotional issues because emotions are just energy in motion. So when the energy is not able to be in motion, then it's trapped. So if the energy that's not in motion behind the subatomic particles not being able to oscillate at their proper frequency is shame, then that person is going to be expressing a lot of shame in their life. And this is going to show up where they're finding themselves in a lot of victimizing situations. Maybe they feel really sorry for themselves and they just can't speak their truth and they just have a lot of self-doubt and this kind of thing. So this is how we work, all of us. We are always all vibrating. We are all oscillating all the time. And so when we're able to clear those energies and allow the cellular structure to return to its proper vibration, so then it would go back from vibrating slow at shame to vibrating however it's supposed to oscillate in that area. Now, as the energy leaves the body, then it's also going to lead to a specific the cellular regeneration phase. And this is what a lot of us are experiencing right now with these solar flares. Old cells are dying off, new cells are being formed so that the bodies can literally heal from the inside out. I hope that, does that answer the question?
Yes. And how does a solar flare affect me? I mean, I know a full moon affects me. I mean, I can tell you, or at least that's my rationalization for my emotional behavior once a month, right? When I'm no longer, it's not my period. So I'm too old for that. But I will say, I understand the impact that the planets clearly must be having on my experience.
Yeah.
But how could I summarize that to understand that? Yeah, okay, so that was a solar flare. It's a scientific ball of energy out there. People don't, so how does that impact me?
Solar flares, this was one of my favorite topics. Solar flares are subatomic particles. So everything around you, whether it be your wall, your car, the plants nearby, the chair you're sitting in, everything has particles in it, where everything is made of particles. And then there's energy in between the particles. The solar activity is what provides us the charge that we need to live. And this gets into deeper politics stuff, which we won't go there unless you want to, but if you want to, I'm happy to go there always. There's reasons why the sun is our enemy right now in some people's minds, when it's not, in fact, our enemy. The sun is actually working to raise our charge. So what it's doing is it's offering various type of particles, photon particles, they're going to contain electrons and they're going to be more positively charged. They're going to charge the protons within our atoms. So as the sun is raising our proton charge within our body and offering our body more electrons, what happens is within an atom, you have a proton and a neutron, and then you have electrons around it. So there's more electrons coming in so that the proton can have a higher charge. So it's literally raising your voltage from the inside out. The best way I like to describe it for people who don't really have a full understanding or who hear these words and go, that was third grade or fourth grade, I don't want to talk about it, is like... It's like, imagine if your house, we all know our house has circuits, right? So there's been circuits off in certain parts of our body. What the sun is doing is coming in and offering the circuits to turn on. So it's like you're able to finally turn on the lights in various parts of your body. But in your body, you don't really know what emotions are going to be trapped in there. So while, yes, it's raising the frequency, now the lights are on in that room and you're going to see what's going on in that part of your body, health-wise, emotional-wise, that maybe you've been avoiding for a while. So that's what we're all experiencing. But the sun is basically raising the charge of our proton, of our particle charge. So as it's doing that, it's raising our vibration. That's where that term actually comes from. It actually does, it's a science term. It's raising the oscillation or the vibration of our atomic structure.
Well, that's an excellent explanation, and I will share that a lot of what I watch and listen to has validated this relationship with the sun, so much so that it kind of explains for me why I crave the sun so much. And although, it's that we are in a love-hate relationship with the sun because our society has said, wear sunscreen, stay out of the sun. And some people are so afraid, but I often sit in the sunspot like a cat. I mean, I just go and find the sun. I just posted the other day about me sitting and trying to absorb it. And another channeler was saying that at some point, now here's where people, you're either going to cut it off now or you're going to keep listening. So where we're moving into this whole new earth, of this new vibration of the earth. And that at some point we will only even need the sun as nutrition.
Yeah.
Have you heard this and understand where this is taking us as we begin to resist what no longer serves us in the food chain here? And I stopped eating red meat recently. I'm trying to avoid, what is considered the enslaved sentient beings on the planet. And I'm trying to really cleanse. And I feel like I'm compelled. Talk about that, this new earth, the sun. Like, what are you learning?
Yeah, well, I can even tell you, I remember what the real old Earth was, which was billions of years ago, because I was able to tap into some past life memories. So I can speak on that as well. But when it comes to the new Earth and that sun will be our only food, that's because all we really need is electricity to be alive. But before I want to just preface this by saying to anybody out there, because I know I enjoy food. I'm a foodie. So don't be scared. This is a process. This is a human evolution that's going to take a very long time. This isn't something we're going to see in a decade or 2 decades or even 3. Most of you listening probably won't even see it in your lifetimes or in your children's lifetimes. But this is where humanity is headed. Ultimately, humans were electrically charged beings. That's all we are. And when we can allow ourselves to live off of the sun and just live off of that charge, and I know there are actually people who do that. I could actually recommend a great guy who you might want to have on your podcast who talks all about this.
Please.
Yeah. He has a great page. It's the Black Airbender on Instagram.
The Black Airbender.
The Black Airbender. Yeah, he's a breatharian. He lives off of breath work and sun and urine therapy, which is a whole nother topic. It gets really.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, our urine is actually stem cells. So when you and that's a whole nother level. I've not gotten to that level yet. I don't know that I will in this lifetime because I do like food, but for some people they love it, and to each their own, right? But we are evolving as a human race, and we are basically. The true human vessel is going to slowly be restored to what it was. And that is an electrically charged being. That's all we are. The sun is our source of energy. And then, of course, behind our sun, we have the galactic suns. But those are our sources of energy. That's where we get our information. That's where true channeling comes from, is through the sun. That's where everything that we need to provide our body with the sustenance it needs is within our body. And then the sun charges our body. So that is, in fact, very, very true. But we won't see it in this lifetime. Yeah.
No, I doubt we'll see it in this lifetime, but I'm intrigued. And it actually, in a certain way, it kind of gives me hope. And that may be confusing to some. But let's back up a moment. And why don't you share with us your awakening? You talk about having this awakening in your 3D world. Well, what does 3D mean for those listening? And what was your awakening?
So, 3D, depending on how you want to look at it, there's a 3D mindset, which, people who are still, we often hear this term, trapped in the matrix. They're still just living within a system-based reality where they, go to work, come home, and they're living in very much a routine. So that's the mindset. But then the 3D reality, everything is a specific density, right? So the 3D density is time and basically keeping up with time and allowing ourselves to be encapsulated in this whole time loop. Whereas the 5D mindset is allowing yourself to see beyond that and recognize that there's something much bigger at play here. So for me, it was a little bit of a process. Like a lot of people, I went through a very, very painful dark night of the soul. It started with losing my mother in 2018. And then my own health took a turn for the worse because my own emotions and energy was not an emotion. And I was very, very sick for 2 or 3 years. And then in 2020, like a lot of people, when the whole CVID thing happened, I started to question that things aren't making sense. And I'll just back up and say, even prior to that, in 2015 and 16, when I was working with clients one-on-one, that's when my abilities had started to turn on. So my abilities had already started to turn on. And I see this a lot where for me, it was clairsentience that came on first and claircognizance came on first. So I would put my hands on a client and I would feel I would feel in my lungs that they weren't breathing well. And then I would find out they had a lung problem and I would just know exactly what the issue was. And I would be able to tell them, go to the doctor and ask about getting specifically this test done or whatever. And it would always turn out to be true. So that started for me in 2015-16. Which I didn't really understand at the time what the heck was happening. I just knew I was tapping into something. But then 2018, my own life took a huge crash, which eventually led to a huge emotional purging of my own, which is the key for awakening. I think a lot of people think that you're going to wake up one day and be like, oh, my abilities are on and life is great and life is grand. And it usually doesn't work like that. Usually there's some type of major crash that has to happen in your life, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that brings you to your knees. And then it's like you're literally on that moment, on that floor praying to God, like, please show me why am I here, and that was that was to my knees, was 2018, 19, and 20. And then I started, we had had solar flares for a long time, but I remember one specific night in February of 2021, I went to bed, I couldn't sleep, and I know a lot of people are experiencing that right now, and that's because of the flares. They're charging our particles. I went to bed and I couldn't sleep, and so I got up, and I was sitting in my bedroom at the foot of my bed, and I was looking at this little dresser that I had. And quite literally, it was as if it was becoming undone and then coming back into matter. So it was coming out of matter, going back into matter. And I was like, what the heck is happening here? And so I started writing what I was seeing. And what I was seeing was how matter is formed. So this is where I really started to see, I was being shown either by mind's eye, by my soul team, my soul, how matter is formed and unformed. And then this is when I began to question. So energy is in everything. So that means there's energy in my dresser, and there's even particles that have to come together, and it's vibrating at a lower vibration. So that was really the beginning of me really beginning to question things at a higher level and wonder, okay, so Tesla always said energy is in everything. And I mean, Nikola Tesla, the
right.
Tesla, he always says energy is in everything. What the heck does that mean? So then I really started going down rabbit holes of wanting to understand the connection. And I am that person who's very, I guess, in a sense, untrusting. If I don't know the science or understand the intention or the truth behind something, then I don't trust it. So I told my guides and my soul team, because I did start to channel at that time as well. I told my soul team, if you want me to believe you, you better start showing me the science behind it. So that's how I was shown the science behind how our abilities work, the science behind how matter is formed, the science behind things, so that I could trust it. So, and that's what I'm all about teaching people as well. Because that's
why I wanted you on here. And I want to highlight people listening. You might have thought she mispronounced, but Christina, you say understand, not understand. Yeah. And how would you describe the difference there?
Well, vocabulary is very important. When we say we understand something, then I'm saying, yes, my inner being agrees with what I'm saying or what you're saying. When we say we understand something, we are implying that we stand underneath what somebody else is saying. And I'll never stand underneath what somebody else is saying unless I actually support them. So it's actually a completely different meaning. And vocabulary, right? That's a whole topic in itself because vocabulary is huge. I would recommend for people to look into etymology to really understand the truth behind vocabulary and the frequency behind the words that we speak, because the words that we speak affect our subatomic particle structure. And we never want to stand underneath anyone else, just like we never want to be sorry for something. We apologize, but we're never sorry.
Absolutely. Christina, you're speaking my language. I try to help people understand that, that your words are your wand. And if you want to create a reality that is different than the one you're currently experiencing, then you have to start first by observing your language. And I also use what is referred to as a Bell model. So tapping into the body and noticing the emotion. And I say energy and motion. I'm like, oh, soul sister.
Yes,
So, it's all the same. And so body, emotion, language. If you were going to take this knowing now and let's give some practical practices to individuals. I mean, I'm sure everybody's getting exhausted of wake up every morning. You got to do these 3 things. You got to say these things. You got to sit in some ice cold water. You got to, 5 a.m. run club. I'm like, guys, just listen to your inner self. And then maybe you have some insight, however, as to what really we should be practicing.
I think the most important thing is joy and no routine. For me, I agree with everything you just said. The cold water, for me, I do cold water showers. I have a sauna. I do Qigong. I love Qigong and Qigong slaps. I do do lymphatic massage. I do chanting. I do humming. But here's the key for all of it. Don't make it a routine. This is what I try to teach people I work with. When we're breaking out of the 3D, we're breaking out of that mindset of living in a routine. I don't care if it's the most amazing thing in the world that fills you up with joy. If you eventually do it every single day, it's going to become boring and you're going to lower your vibration. So switch it up, have maybe, I would suggest list out maybe 10 things that you like doing first thing in the morning or at specific times of the day that you enjoy doing. List out 10 things. And then on that any given day, what do I feel like doing on my list today? Or what does my body need? What do I feel like doing? And what is my body? And I often say, check in with your body. There's this whole thing I teach where you can ask your body what it needs. It's a form of kinesiology, but it's more of an energetic form. And you learn to communicate with your body and ask your body what it wants. Do you want breath work today? Do you want the sauna today? Do you want a cold shower today? And then listen to your body and then be present in your life, right? I feel like when we're always thinking, I have to wake up tomorrow and do my cold bath and then do this and then do this and then it becomes stressful. We need to be present in our bodies. So it's more important to be present in your body and do nothing but feel joy than it is to force yourself to do any of the other helpful healing tools, which are amazing. But again, everything has its place and space.
Well, everybody out there is on a different like the spectrum, right? Where some people are able to tap into that presence and acknowledge that what is happening and they're choosing how they want to respond to that experience. And then some people are like, well, I can't sit still. No, and they're vibrating I kind of describe it as a way of being I used to have, which was the vibration is all here from the chest up. Nothing is grounded.
Right.
And we're resisting. We're constantly arguing for our limitations because we're in our head and we're not fully present in the body.
Yeah.
How might we help these individuals who are so scattered? And by the way, I love my life, right? I'm happy. I'm in joy, but it's like, I want to go hug them and go, you're almost there.
You're almost there.
What advice do we give them? Like, how do we help people come back into the moment?
One thing a practice that I like to do is a very simple visualization that you can do at any time. There's this and there's a little breath work, simple breath technique. I visualize a gold spinning disc, and you can use any color. For me, I choose gold. I visualize it spinning inside of my mind, and then I'll just visualize it spinning all the way down through my body, down through my feet, and going right to the center of the earth. And that helps me to just connect with all of the energy in my body through my feet and feel grounded, right? So that's something that I like to do. There's also there's a mudra very, very simple. And these do work because your body is a circuit. Our body is an electrical circuit, no different than the lights in your house, literally. So if you bring your forefinger, your pointer finger, and your thumb together, and you just hold them together, you can be sitting in your car, you can be in an office meeting, anything like this. This is creating the circuit to allow your body to be grounded. So that's a great grounding one. It does really help, especially for people who are working all day and they're in a conversation. They can't think about what they need to do, but they can have their fingers together in this position. That will help. And then there's resonant breathing, which I love. This one really helps me, especially if I can't sleep at night, especially with these solar flares, when I'm laying in bed sometimes and have that little bit of anxiety from my nervous system being activated. Really, really simple. Just inhale through your nose for 5 seconds and exhale through your nose for 5 seconds for a total of a minute. This brings your body back to what's called homeostasis, which is where the body is at its resting or home state. So when you're able to apply resonant breathing, which is you're actually breathing with the rhythm of the earth's Schumann resonance. So you're breathing with the rhythm of the earth. The body can find its home, and that will help to really help you be in your body.
I really think breath work is critical.
Yeah.
And I noticed, my husband, when we first came together, he's in his growth stages of his evolution and expansion. And when we first met, he had a tendency when he was distracted to breathe in, and he was holding his breath. And then he would let it out, and he didn't even know he was doing it.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you're preventing oxygen, you're preventing connection by that little hesitated hold. And he said, my therapist told me the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it's amazing. But now I notice he sleeps better now. He's much more relaxed. I mean, he used to be very, with all due respect, sweet man, he was kind of uptight around things. And now he's going with the flow, to your point. Is there any other breath work that you appreciate or practice for yourself that we could share?
Yeah, well, I do all different kinds. It really does depend on the body's needs, because each breath work does a specific function. So, of course, there's the Wim Hof method, which I would recommend looking into. Is great, but also be cautious with it, because I feel like for some people it can be a little bit overwhelming at first. So when I'm working with somebody, I don't say go right to the Wim Hof method, because they can be a little bit intimidated. Although I do love the Wim Hof method. I love Wim Hof. I just want to clarify that. But when I work with people and they're new to breath work, then I find that it's a little overwhelming for them. So I will often do what I just shared with you, the resonant breathing. There's a fire breath, which is where you inhale in and out of your nose very, very quickly. It can get a little bit messy. And the whole function of it is to activate your diaphragm, which your diaphragm actually is your lymphatic system pump. So that's where if somebody has a slow lymphatic system, or maybe they're not even feeling present in their body, that's also another great one. But that's one that's very specific for certain types of illnesses. The other one I love, and I don't know the name of it. I don't know that there is a name, but it's where you inhale and you exhale for 30 seconds fast. So yeah, it sounds a little bit, intimate depending on how somebody's listening, but you inhale through the nose and then you blow out more air through the mouth. So it's and this is great for people who are having anxiety, and you would want to do that for 30 seconds, rest for about 10 or 20 seconds, and then do it for another 30 seconds. And what this does is, this would reference to your husband and what he was experiencing. Our body creates what's called neuropeptides. Neuropeptides are created in the brain, and they speak to they're created by the endocrine system, and they speak to the body to create the very emotions. They create the cellular function of an emotion. So that's where we say the emotions are really trapped within the body. But neuropeptides, for example, say if you were crossing the street and somebody almost hit you with a car, and you got it, you were fine, but you had that jolt of anxiety where you're like, right? And you just got really nervous for a moment. Your body would have created the neuropeptides. The neuropeptides would have created a whole series of functions that would have put you in the necessary fight, flight, and freeze modes to save yourself back in the caveman days, all that kind of fun stuff. But the thing is, those neuropeptides are still in the body, and they need to be excreted out of the body. So when you use this type of breath work, especially for somebody who has a lot of anxiety or is just a nervous person, they probably have a lot of trapped hormonal debris within their body. So when they apply this type of breath work, it really gets those neuropeptides and those hormones moving, especially if they do this every morning or in a very heightened state. So again, there's different types of breath work for different types of reasons. And I don't recommend just one. I recommend exploring them all and understanding the specific physiology needs behind them. Because just like anything else, when we get stuck in one modality, then it's not always the best. We're here to explore everything. And that's how I believe anyway.
I believe that as well. And, I really think flow is the opportunity here. And if you can get breath work or any kind of practices that resonate with you into your way of healing and expanding. I mean, you talk about memory in the cell, right? And these peptides are stuck. So how do we help people? One of the challenges I have as a coach, and maybe you can help me with this, is people get so caught up in that past trauma and they identify with it. And of course they do, because it's still in their bodies somehow, some way. They haven't been able to release it. But it's fascinating to me that individuals get so stuck in the identity with their past, and they want, because they're so desperate to be seen, heard, understood, loved, connected with. But I'm like, as a coach, and you talk about being you said you're not a no fluff kind of coach. I'm kind of a plain talk, values-based coach myself.
Yeah.
And I can sit with you all day long and talk about your historic trauma and send you off to 3 or 4 ways to release it. But my next question is, okay, so what? What do you want to do next? Is it that everyone is going to be able to let go of that history and move forward into what's possible? Or are some people just not going to? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think that's there's multiple answers to that, because it really depends on a person's individual soul contract. And that's where we get into even higher stuff. But for some people, their soul contract is to maybe relive or live in a specific trauma zone. I'll just call it a zone for a lifetime. Maybe it's a karmic influence. Maybe it's something that their soul wanted to experience, right? A lot of times I get asked, if we're able to heal, then how come certain people don't heal? Well, that's because their soul doesn't want them to heal. Their soul might want to experience cancer or being a quadriplegic or whatever it is. Their soul may have come here for that growth expansion, because ultimately that's what we are. So there's that aspect. But then there's also, I think it's important that we realize that the body is always in a 3D. So we are in a 3D reality. Even if we have a 5D consciousness mindset, we're never going to change the fact that we're in a 3D reality. And this is where the whole New Earth, some of these psychics talking drive me absolutely cuckoo, because I think that they're scaring people. And the truth is, we are encapsulated in a 3D reality. That's not going to change right now. That it's going to be a very long, slow process. But our consciousness is in a 5D pretty much always. We're returning to a 5D consciousness state. And what I mean by that, and how this relates to trauma, is the body is storing the memory, because the body is always going to be in linear time. Whereas the consciousness is like, yeah, but we're over here. I'm over here. I can see everything, right? I can see why it happened. I can see what will happen when we heal from it. And I can see how we can heal from it. But the body is still holding the memory. So the key is to get the memory. It's a physical process. We have to get it moved from the body. And I think that's where modalities like EFT are great, somatic release, breath work, all that kind of stuff gets the memory out of the body. Once we can reprogram the body, and I do mean literally, because we have to get it out of the body, but then we have to reprogram the body, because the body is just like a computer in the sense that it holds biological code. And if we don't offer it a new program, it's going to go back to its default setting. So when we can recognize that we have to do something to prevent going back to that default, so we have to create new patterns. We have to do the work. This is where showing up every day for yourself and doing the work is key. And I always tell people that I work with that, because I've seen the difference when somebody does the homework that comes through, channeled homework that comes through, versus when they don't do the homework that comes through. The strides and the quantum leaps that they're able to make are huge. changed. Whereas the people who don't do the work, they're calling me 2 or 3 weeks later and they've got another problem that's similar to what they came in with in the first place. So showing up for yourself is key, and recognizing that you're in a biological computer. Even your brain is a computer and it has to be reprogrammed. Then you can absolutely heal it. And if somebody is not healing for varying reasons, then it would be because that likely their soul contract came here for that. And then that's a whole nother discussion where some people believe we can end contracts and start a new life. And I do believe that that's possible to a degree, but that's work that's done in the astral.
No, this is phenomenal. This reminds me of the body coding work. I can't remember the name of the guy, but I've had body coding work done over like the last 5 to 10 years. I have this one girl, and I'll send her a note and I'm like, look, something's happening. I've got a heart block. Something is preventing me from accessing myself, or, both my husband and I have had work done because we're trying to remove the memory, but at the same, whatever's in the way. And it's shocking, the summaries. Like half of it, I don't even understand when, things like the quote, will to die energy.
Yeah.
Wow. What does that mean? I want to go back. I don't want to be in the 3D anymore. So, and that could have been something that happened at the age of like 7.
Yeah.
So we have all these traumas. Now, I think we need to remind everybody that don't freak out. I think that's what we all signed up for. Like you said, the soul contract. We're here to have an experience, and there is value in all of it.
Exactly.
All of it. And, that's why I do rapid transformational therapy, which is a hypnotherapy to rewire the brain. Is that enough, though? Do I need to be combining the somatic practices of some sort of movement for the body and the breath work in addition to rewiring their brain with the subliminal messaging after we've done the hypnotherapy work? I guess it's just a combination, right?
Yeah, I feel like, again, it's an individual setting. We're all here for different reasons. And we're one, the way I like to see it is we're the same spirit. We're different souls of the same spirit, but we're here for different experiences. So that's just kind of a deeper way of saying that everybody has their own journey. And so I might not heal the same way you would heal. You might be able to heal with hypnotherapy. I might have to be, up in the gym or out in nature. We all have different ways of healing. And that goes back to our soul's chosen experience. And the soul came here for expansion, and the soul wants to learn through its healing. So whatever a person or soul chose to expand through is what they're going to heal the best in. And I do often find there is a link to blood type. So I think that blood type is key as well it plays a role in how the soul is able to communicate to the body. Because if the body is it's like a biological spacesuit, and blood is the one thing that connects everything. So when we're talking about that, then the soul is it's connecting to the biological spacesuit, but the physiology of the body. So think of it like a model car. Every model car works a little bit different, right? So does every model human, which would be basically their base blood type. So that's a whole nother level of a conversation. But yeah, and that gets really interesting into genetics and stuff.
Oh, God, I want to talk about that all day. That's so interesting. It really is quite fascinating. Do you have any insight? I'm sitting here, I'm a coach, I'm helping individuals, and obviously coaching is about your clients' understanding, right?
Yeah.
Their intuitive way of being and what they're drawn to. And usually people are drawn to different modalities because they find some sort of excitement or energy around, that sounds interesting or positive for me. So I never impose any of those practices or therapies on people, but I do offer them and invite people. And when they're ready, they're ready. And if they're not, they're like, stop talking to me about crystals and feathers, Nakoa. I don't want to talk about that. But can we tap in for a minute and ask how much of this effort is just creating more experience? And I'm making my hands come back and forth and touching like we're all intertwining. Or am I really helping people influence their outcomes? Or was it going to happen anyway? Like, how much of it is free will and how much of it is destiny?
Yeah. Well, that's another loaded question. I love that question because, it's like, here's how it's shown to me, and this gets really interesting, but
cool.
Let me just try to tap into it because I did channel this a while ago. So let me just tap into the memory of it and the information of it. where it's like, okay, right. Thank you. I'm looking up at the sky. Thank you for that download. Thank you. Can you download the rest of this into me now, please? Thank you. Okay. So it's kind of like, right. Thank you. So it's kind of like when you are, when you set your GPS to go somewhere and, you want to go from North Carolina to New York, and there's many different roads you can take, right? So your end point, your destined point, your destiny is going to be in New York. You're coming from North Carolina. So no matter what, you're going to go from North Carolina to New York. However, based on any given choice point, which would match your vibration. So as you're moving on your GPS starts taking you to New York. Now you're going straight, but then something happens. Maybe there's a view you want to look at. So you take a right to take that nice looking view. And now you're looking at this nice view that took you on a different road. That's a choice point. That would be a vibration. You were attracted to the vibration of joy, which took you on a more scenic view. Now, if you're going, we're back at the same starting point and we're still heading to New York, but we get on the road and something happens. Something scares us and we have to jerk the wheel quickly. And so we get a flat tire. So that would be a fear vibrational response, causes you to have a flat tire. Now maybe you get stuck in some crappy little city where you have to have your tires changed, your car looked at, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to take you on a different path road. Every choice point, everything that happens it's chosen through a vibration that we carry or that we choose to attach ourselves to. So as we're going through life, we're always receiving choice points. And these choice points are always based on a specific vibration we're carrying or we're attracted to. We're usually attracted to something that we're carrying because like attracts like. So no matter what, you're always going to end up in New York. You're always going to end up at your destined point. However, just like when we use our GPS in our car and we take that wrong turn and the little lady on the little GPS thing goes, rerouting. Yep. Your life can end up in a continual state of rerouting. So you might not get to that choice point until you're 50, 60, or 70 years old, or you might get there as quickly as possible based on the amount of times you were rerouting and your chosen experiences, which would have been determined by the vibration you were carrying and therefore the vibrations that you were drawn to.
Yes, everything is a choice point. And if we knew that those choice points, so they're layered choice points too.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I mean, when you said that about the flat tire, I immediately went to a memory of driving down College Road and seeing an item in the road and thinking, oh my God, I don't want to hit that.
Yeah.
I hit it. Tire goes flat. Try to call for help, not getting a response in a timely manner. Supposed to be in Raleigh. Need the other car. And my new man has to come and save the day. And I thought, oh, that was a test about him saving me.
Yeah.
That had nothing to do with the tire. It was a layered, I want to feel loved and taken care of and that I am not abandoned.
Yes.
And I know that's why that happened. So our choice, if you can really recognize the choice points, I love the phrase, as an opportunity to heal and observe yourself, and it is happening for me in some way. Mm-hmm. It's also because of me.
Exactly.
But it's happening for me.
Exactly.
Then I ultimately become more of a higher vibration when I have those validating points. Oh yeah, I'm healing that. Okay, look, I am not alone. Look, he did come. Look, he did save the day. Not that I needed the day to be saved, but there was a part of me that did.
Yeah.
That was wounded and still needed that love and attention in that moment.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. And, I think, and it's so right, because the way I like to look at it and what's being shown to me is that's because there's an eye in the sky. So say, for example, you were for whatever reason before that, you had lost the ability to really trust and feel like somebody would show up for you. So that your eye in the sky, your soul, your guides, your angels, God, whatever somebody chooses to use as a vocabulary word, would have been, you know what, we need to remind her, we need to get her back on the shorter path to New York. So we are going to put something in her path. It's going to seem like an obstacle, but in the end, it's going to help get her back on the path that she needed. So yeah, that's absolutely, things are loaded, and we always have somebody watching out for us. And I think that that's also where, again, doing the work, and by work, I mean praying, meditating, staying connected with your inner self is going to help you no matter what path or what choice point you end up taking, you can always rewrite and reroute your own path based on the work you're doing internally to shift your vibration and asking for help, right? We need to remember that ultimately we're in these vessels, but that we have some powerful beings above us that are always there willing to help if we just tune in and ask.
And I think we have to tune in and ask in a way that is not out of this, that lower vibration of catabolic kind of frustration. Like, why aren't you helping me? It's more of, okay, I'm now open and ready to receive your help. Please help me. And isn't that part of the free will piece that I have to ask?
You have to ask.
I used to think, I was like, what kind of a God doesn't just help everybody?
Yeah.
But it's because we signed up for some sort of soul contract for an experience, and God, the universe, spiritual support teams are like, all right, you're on your path. Let us know if you need us.
Exactly.
And we're here. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. We came here for the individual experience of the whole. So, we're all pieces of the one God, of the one creation. We're all the same energy, but the same energy wants to experience itself in multiple facets. So it can only do that when we have a free will choice. So, and the way it's shown to me is it's kind of like, say if source energy is this big, and I'm just making a round finger with a circle with my hands, but say if source energy is this big, and I'm not saying that it is, I'm just using this as an example. Every time our souls go out and come back with experience, source expands. Then more souls return with more experiences, more expansion. So God, source creator, is expanding itself and its own consciousness, vibration, and awareness by allowing us to have our individual free will experiences. So yeah, we do have to ask for help, and we have to welcome in the energies as well.
Man, I could talk about this all day.
I know, this is the fun stuff, right?
This is really the fun stuff. And if we can relax I want everybody to imagine, if you're having a hard time, I want you to take the blinders off. Like, imagine you're a horse. Just take the blinders off and just sit there. Yeah. And just look around and just take in these words. Just ponder. Not that you have to believe anything, but if you can open yourself up to ponder it, just experience. If this were true, how would that make me feel? How would that change my life experience? If this were true, if I allowed this to be a belief that I carried with me, an assumption, an interpretation of life, how would my world change? Don't be afraid of just sitting in the thought and experience of pondering. Mm-hmm. You can go back to whatever it is that you've been experiencing and choosing in your life path. Yeah. But I invite everybody listening today to open themselves to that. Now, did you always research this type of stuff when you were younger? I mean, was your upbringing a unique one? I would like to tap back in. How did you get here so quickly in the last,
Well, it's years? Funny because, in my own personal life, I had trauma in my life as a young girl. I think a lot of us have. We believe it or not, we signed up for trauma, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I had some traumas that happened in my young life. But now that I've cleared them, when I did the soul retrieval work to clear them, I remember as a little girl, this is how I worked. I was able to talk to, because I talk to trees, I talk to animals. I'm able to directly communicate with all consciousness, energy. Everything has a consciousness. So as a child, I would spend most of my time in the woods behind my house, talking to trees, talking to the grass, talking to the air, talking to the wind. So I thought I was just, as a child, I just thought it was normal, to be honest. I didn't even think much about it. It wasn't until I went into school and got groomed, just like every other child, to feel like I was different. And then that was really hard for me because I was so sensitive. And I was that child who would always want to help the other children, to the point where I got bullied, which was not always a good thing. But then my mom was really cool. My mom was that kind of lady. We had psychic Sundays, like from the time I was like, I want to say 11 or 12 to like 15 or 16. Every Sunday we had a meditation group in our house with psychics come over and play with crystals. And like, when I had a pendulum in high school. So when I would come home from school and would be asked about, be wondering if is Tommy going to take me to the prom? Like, who am I going to go to the prom with? I'd be sitting there playing with my pendulum or the ruins, the Viking ruins, and doing that kind of thing instead of going to play soccer or basketball. Like, that was my life growing up. And then I got away from it in my 20s. I think like a lot of people do. I went through my own young adult phase where I had some fun and I, explored a lot. And I was like, I wasn't really into anything except for going out and dancing and that kind of thing. And then it started to return when my abilities started to return. And actually around 2012, I heard this term called incarnated angel. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? Because I always knew I was different, but I didn't really understand what the difference was or the layers of souls. I just knew that for me as a child, I talked directly to God. I would just talk to the energies. I didn't know how or why. So when I heard the term incarnated angel, I started learning a little bit more. And then I heard the term starseed, and then I heard all these other terms. And I was like, all right, so there's different types of souls. Well, what the heck does that mean? And I pondered this question on and off for years. And then a couple of years later, like I said, 2015, my abilities turned on. And then I went through my major awakening process during my dark night of the soul. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it worked for me.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful story. I'm very jealous of Psychic Sundays. I'd like to start implementing those right away.
It was fun. My mom was so cool. She was like the coolest lady ever.
Oh, I bet. And I'm sorry you lost your mom. You said she passed away. And yeah, I lost my father a year and a half ago. And it's been interesting since his passing. I've suffered. I used to be the happiest person I knew. And it's really uncanny for me. I'm really suffering over that new way of being that I don't know who I am. I must be shedding the layers.
Yeah.
And because I'm a little frustrated. So for those of us that don't have those really clear, clairvoyance and all those clairs, some of us know enough about it that like me, like I want mine to open. I'm like, how come mine haven't happened yet? And yet I want to give myself some grace because I happen to have skills related to the 3D world that are powerful, and I can communicate really, really well. And that's why you're on this podcast. I know that I have a voice and an ability to connect with multiple layers of what's happening here. Yep. And I'll be able to share this, that if I was just doing it over here and opening my abilities, I might not have the platforms and the skills to share it. And that's why you are here with me today. So I recognize there's value in all, but there is a part of me that's super ready. So I'm going to have to do some work with you, I think. How about that?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And I feel like you already are. Like when I look at you, I see you have such a big consciousness, and it's a clear cognizance that I see coming through for you. And you have such a large consciousness. It's and that's what it is. You're able to tap into networks of energy because your consciousness is so big that you're just doing it organically. And I think that that's what happens for a lot of people. It's just an organic process. And again, this gets back to soul contract, is how some people are supposed to sit in sessions and do readings and that kind of thing. And then there's those of us, I'm kind of like you, I'm able to tap into it when I want to, but for the most part, I allow myself to be organically led unless I'm in a specific session where I need to go into the astral plane and do it, then it's different. But again, we're all humans are psychic. I think that's the biggest takeaway in that whole little conversation right there, because all humans are psychic, and it's time that we realize that we're just antennas for God, source, creator, higher self, angels, whatever you want to call it. You're a huge antenna. You really are a huge antenna. That's why you're able to tap into everything you are. So just trust your antenna.
I do. And I appreciate you saying that. It's validating. We need to be reminded that what we're doing and who we are is enough. And no matter how you show up, you can't get this thing called life wrong.
No.
And if you don't play out the soul contract this time, you can play it out somewhere else or come back here, I guess. I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, talk to me as we wrap up, because I'm going to have you back like multiple times. And I keep putting on Do Not Disturb, but all these messages keep coming through. It's the angels. They're trying to validate us with the bells. So tell me how your life is designed intentionally now, differently than it was before your awakening. How do you leverage now this knowing and create a life by design that you love?
Well, I think for me, the key, if I don't love doing something, I won't do it. I was a people pleaser. I grew up in a household, a family where we would show up even if we didn't necessarily want to. And that was also part of my awakening process. That was one of the first steps. One of the first steps is to show up just for yourself. And it will feel selfish at first, and this is a channeled message I often receive, and I teach to people, you have to be selfish to be selfless. You can only show up for other people when you truly show up for yourself. So that would be the first thing I do every day is I check in with myself and I ask myself, this is what I have to do today. I have this appointment and this appointment, but beyond that, what do I want to do today? What feels good today? Getting back to the 10-point list, what will allow me to feel my best self today? And then I follow the guidance. And, I think it's also, I'm just going to be completely honest and share that sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming when you're going through this stuff because we came from this 3D mindset where you knew what you were going to do when you were 20, when you're 30, when you're 40, when you're 50. We had all these maps planned out for us, right? And that keeps it easy. But that doesn't offer the soul the growth that it really craves in life. So there has to be a part of us, a huge part of us, that's willing to just open up and accept the unknown, right? Leap off of that cliff and say, all right, God, what do you got in store for me? Because I hope there's a parachute here, right? So that I'm in that actual process right now myself in my own life. I sold my house in Connecticut. I moved to Asheville, and I have no idea what I'm doing other than showing up for myself in a loving way every day, and allowing myself to be open to people like you reaching out to me and being invited into new ways. And I'm meeting all sorts of new people and having conversations that I would have longed to have years ago, but I didn't know the people would look at me. I was that person that used to talk and people's eyes would glaze over. So and now people want to hear what I have to say. So it's fun for me. So to answer your question, I show up for myself every day and offer myself what I need in the best and most loving way that I can. And there's this saying that I always say, I am open to all and attached to none. And I allow whatever's coming into my life to reveal itself. And I keep my heart open with a boundary, but I keep my heart open and I'm like, okay, God, is this for me? Is this not for me? And then I allow myself to trust the process and see what unfolds.
Thank you. That is beautiful. And that must be what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Because it's very different than it used to be. I have this big space and your ability to, I think even Martha Beck talks about standing in the middle of her home in the morning when she has an overwhelming to-do list, and she'll stand very still and she'll ask the question, what needs me today?
Yeah.
And she'll feel her body pulled towards the desk for the bills or outside to walk through the trees. And I am doing that more and more and more, but it is hard to let go of those habits, and you have to rewrite the story. You got to rewrite the life, and you're not really rewriting it, are you? You're just remembering the real story.
Yeah. You're unprogramming yourself, letting the ego die.
That's right. Well, the last question I'll ask, because I have to wrap it up because, I don't have to, but I should. It's been an hour and it went by so quickly. I love to ask this question to my clients. And again, I also wanted to validate your thing about being selfish. I call strategic. It's called strategic self-care. Being selfish, it's self-care is not selfish. It's strategic. Right. So you just described that strategy in your day-to-day. What is the one thing that you want to celebrate the most about you as a being before we hang up?
I would say my ability to show up as a seemingly weirdo and be my most raw, authentic self. I mean, to go from being a woman who lived, I was that woman who had, I had all the plastic surgeries done. That's a whole nother, I was that woman who, my goal was to be like a real housewife, right? I had the fake boobs, I had the blown up lips, I had it all done. To go from that to trusting myself in the darkness of my own bedroom, sitting there in my PJs with my hair in a messy bun, watching atoms swirl in and out of this bureau, to be able to go through all of that process, evolutionary process, and get to the other side of it and still use and learn to use my voice and show up as seemingly a weirdo so authentically that it's helping other people to show up as themselves authentically. Because, I'm realizing that's one of my soul's mission is to help people to feel comfortable to be themselves. And I had to go through a long process of that, an undoing process of myself in order to be here to do that.
Wow, and I didn't even realize that, but you're right. I did shrooms once with a guide, a coach, and a handful of people. We stayed in the house, and the one word that kept coming to me was, was attachment.
Yes.
You're attached. You're attached. You're attached. You're attached. I mean, after the whole few hours, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm attached.
Yeah.
And I still am. I'm still attached. I'm still attached to the yard looking just quite right. And, and my hair looking, I put the headphones on twice before getting into but I also recognize that was an experience. You had an experience and I'm proud of you too. I want to celebrate that for you too.
Thank you.
Because you were able to let go to let in.
Yeah.
And there it is. The understanding. I want us to leave on that one word.
I love it.
And I forgot to tell everybody that another really cool synchronicity was that your cousin and I connected at the Many Women, Many Stories event. And you haven't even been talking to your cousin as much as I have. I mean, I was like, what? So we're all meant to be. Your family and our family, I guess, is supposed to connect.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Give her a hug for me. I gotta reach out to her today. Give her a hug for me.
I will, and I hope you'll come visit us in Wilmington. I'd love to.
It's funny. Wilmington
Really?
keeps getting brought up to my attention from various people. You are now the third person in 2 weeks that brought Wilmington up to my attention. I'm like, okay, apparently I got to go see Amy. I don't know what's going on here.
You must need some water energy right now.
I really do. I miss the ocean. Yeah, I'm an ocean girl and I do miss it.
Oh, me too. Well, you're welcome to come here. I've got multiple bedrooms. We got 6 kids, so there's plenty of room here. They're all out of the house. We have room for you. Please come visit, and it would be my honor to host you. And we'll sit and look at the water and have coffee with Nakoa.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thank you, Nakoa.
Thank you, Christina. Such an honor. I will talk to you again soon.
Thanks for joining us for a caffeinated conversation. Subscribe to Coffee with Nakoa for more stories from people living a life by design. You can also find inspiration on Instagram. Just follow Coffee with Nakoa. And check out our website, coffeewithnakoa.com. And that's Nakoa, Nicoa. We look forward to talking with you soon, and enjoy your coffee between now and then.